About 15 years ago, when I was just 21, I thought I had everything wrapped up. I had a steady career in the arts, my lifelong passion. I had a great apartment in a wonderfully bohemian area of the city that I lived in. And I had a great boyfriend too. The man who I was probably going to spend the rest of my life with. At least I thought he was going to be that guy. But when I came home early from work one afternoon and found him in her bed with some girl he'd met on a bloody dating app, my entire world fell apart. Within like a week of that, I was living back at home with my parents, too depressed to go to work, wondering just how in the hell I'd been so foolish. Before the breakdown, I'd applied for a loan which I was planning on buying my first car. It was approved, but instead of using it for its intended purpose, I booked a one-way ticket to Australia. I planned on escaping everything I was going through at home by using the money to do some backpacking down under for a year, which is exactly what I did. It was the adventure of a lifetime, and for the first time in a long time, I actually felt alive again. I bummed around in Melbourne for a few weeks, one of the most beautiful cities that I've ever seen. I'm a huge coffee fiend too, and they honestly have some of the best coffee shops I've ever had the pleasure of visiting. To those guys, coffee isn't just something you drink, it's an obsession. But after a while, I got bored of just hanging around out with beach bums and soaking up the sun. So, I decided to hit the road. I spent a little money on an old beat-up VW camper van that looked like it had been in service since the 1960s. It was really beat up, but after validating an engine tune-up, it ran like a dream, and I felt like a traveling hippie of yore as I took to the road and began to explore Australia. Everything was going swimmingly, right up until I found myself exploring the countryside around the state of Victoria. At one point, I found myself running low on petrol and water and kept trying to keep an eye out for a small town or roadside station from which I can get top-ups. After hours and hours of driving, I saw a sign for a place called Cassillis. So, I turned off the main highway and down a dirt road, following it until I hit a few buildings that came into view. I parked up the van, got out, and began to explore the place, hoping I could find someone at least to ask directions to the local gas station from. But there was not a soul in sight. The place was completely and utterly abandoned. Worst of all, the place looked burned, like all these old signs were blistered and peeling, like the place had suffered some intense heat wave or something, or like a wildfire had swept through the place at some point. I called out, trying to make sure this place was as dead as it appeared to be. Then a few more times, but not a soul answered. I started to get really creepy vibes from the place, so I started to head back towards the van, disappointed and worried that I might end up tanked out on the side of the highway. This is right in the middle of the Australian summer too, like the end of January, so the temps were obscenely high, and without proper water supplies, life down under can get extremely dangerous, extremely quickly. Right as I'm about to climb back into the seat of my van, I hear a noise coming from behind me. The creaking of a door frame as someone or something opens up something up behind me. I spin around, half expecting to see some kind of burned flesh ghost or something. But it wasn't. Obviously it wasn't. I just managed to get myself creeped out in that weird old ghost town. There, in an open doorway, was an old woman, some scabby old deer with matted gray hair that squinted at me from the porch of her dilapidated old home. "Who are you?" she asked me, with her voice only slightly less rough as crunching gravel. I told her I was lost and was looking for a place to top up on gas, then asked her if she can point me in the direction of a place that was actually alive and not a set location for a bloody horror movie. Okay, I didn't phrase it like that, but you get the idea. Turns out she's half deaf and keeps squawking, "What?" at me while cupping her ear, so I have to fight off the instinct to just turn and flee, taking a few steps forward raising my voice to make myself heard. She tells me she doesn't know of anywhere, but her friends might, and then invites me inside of her little half-burned home to ask them myself. Again, I really don't want to, but I have little choice at this point but to rely on the kindness of strangers, even if they do look absolutely mental. So I reluctantly walk over to this woman's house, stepping inside, expecting to see a circle of similarly haggard old people sitting around a desk fan and drinking or something. But it was anything but that, and what I saw made my skin crawl when I actually saw what was inside. The old woman had a rocking chair set up in front of an old TV, one that wasn't even plugged in, and as she sat back down in her chair, she stared at the blank set like it was actually turned on. Next to her chair were little collections of bones, animal skeletons that had been laid out on the rotting wood floor like little skeletal jigsaw puzzles. I just froze, realizing that these were the friends she had been referring to. "Go ahead, ask them now," the old woman squawked. "My friends know everything. They see into the past, the present, and the future. They'll have any answer you could possibly ask for." I could not even put into words how creeped out I was. What little sympathy I had for her just was completely ebbed away, as I wondered whether or not she had killed these animals herself, or had simply gone out and collected the bones from things that were just lying there in the bush. I know, I should have been more polite. I know, I should have had much more sympathy for someone that was clearly very disturbed, but I just found myself backing up towards the door and walking out after I thanked her for her time. I walked as fast as I could back to the camper van, jumping into the driver's seat and starting her up before I drove the hell out of there. I've never forgotten the name of that town, and from what I understand, there's been something of a revival in the area thanks to farmland being redistributed. This has led to a burgeoning cider industry, and I'm pretty sure there's a winery opened up in the town now that's doing pretty good business. At least that's what all my old Aussie mates tell me. But I've always wondered what happened to that creepy old woman. If maybe at some point they found her dead in her little house, a skeleton sitting in that rocking chair, still staring at that old TV, surrounded by her rotten little friends. I'm a professional snake catcher here in Australia. It's a dangerous job, but I suppose somebody has to do it. So a little while ago, I get a call from somebody in town called Woollahra, which is about 150 kilometers west of Melbourne. They'd spotted a tiger snake in their garden, and they asked me to get there as quickly as possible to remove the thing from their property. Tiger snakes are no joke. They're big, they're brown, and they account about a fifth of all snake bites in the entirety of Australia. So I arrive at the property with my snake catching gear, greeting the owner, who points me in the direction of the tiger snake, who's all curled up in this bloke's garage. I use what is basically an elongated trash grabber to get a hold of him around his neck, before putting him in a big old plastic bin type thing that we used to secure the venomous snakes. Simple routine procedures, job done. Now, as snake catchers, we don't just catch snakes. We can offer advice to homeowners on how to secure their properties from all kinds of slithering creatures and creepy crawlies. I'm not saying it's possible to completely secure your home from the entrance of such animals, but there are many things you can do to actually lower the possibility of their intrusion. So, me and the homeowner are talking and walking around the property. I'm showing him all the likely places a snake could enter, be it through little cracks in the fencing or whatever, when I hear something hiss from just close by me. It was another tiger snake, the biggest I think I've ever seen in my entire life, and we are way too close for it for comfort. So it attacks, and these things are fast, really bloody fast. When they want to, this thing has decided it's going to try and bite me. Tiger snakes have a bad reputation for a damn good reason. A lot of snakes will just hiss a bit until you clear out of its little bubble of safety, or they'll just get out of the area without causing too much of a fuss. They're aggressive little boogers, whose philosophy is more like, the best defense is a good offense. So 9 times out of 10, they'll just go for you without a second thought. Now, instead of following the homeowner and just running away like I probably should have done, I immediately work my way around it, grabbing a hold of the thing's tail before hoisting it up in the air. Normally, with a lot of snakes, this is enough to make yourself safe until you can find a good way to properly dispose of it. But, like I said, this thing was absolutely bloody massive, and I just watched in absolute terror as the thing swings itself up towards my face. I dodged the initial strike, but seeing the snake's fangs so close to my face rattled me good and proper, which opened me up to a second strike, which hit right near my armpit. It didn't even really feel like a bite at first, but I suppose that was the adrenaline working on me. It wasn't until I took my shirt off to double check that I realized I'd been got, and within a few minutes, I was already feeling the effects of the thing's venom. It started with a swelling pain around my feet and neck, before my whole body started to tingle. Then I felt numb, started sweating like the devil, and by the time the owner had the ambulance on the phone, I was having pretty severe breathing difficulties and finding it harder and harder to move. We were pretty much in the middle of nowhere too. I had no idea where the nearest hospital was or how long it would take for an ambulance to make it out to us. So, I honestly thought this is it. I'm gonna die on the job. I actually got my mobile out and called up the wife. Although it was probably the most difficult call I've ever had to make, I told her that I'd been bitten and that I was probably gonna die. I told her goodbye and that I loved her and the kids with all my heart, and that I was so sorry that it had to happen like this. She was in bits, and I can't blame her. I was in tears too by the time I brought myself to hang up. A few minutes later, I was puking my guts up and feeling all faint, and as I started to black out, I said one last little prayer for God to have mercy on me for all my mistakes. Then blackness. But to my utter surprise, I woke up. I had no idea where I was when I opened my eyes, but I come to find out that I was at the Ballarat Base Hospital, about 100 kilometers from the property where I was bitten. I was too weak to really celebrate. I just felt this complete sense of relief that I was still alive somehow. I was in the intensive care unit there for about 24 hours, long enough for the wife and kids to come visit for a long, tearful amount of hugs and kisses. The snake bites was bad enough, but its anti-venom can really do a number on you. You get what's called serum sickness in the weeks after you've received it. I'm talking fever, chills, rash, muscle aches, joint aches, itching, and blood in the urine. All kinds of nasty business like that. Safe to say, I retired from snake catching soon after. I couldn't put my family through that sort of thing again. But we opened up a business that goes around schools teaching kids how to keep themselves safe from snakes and spiders. My way of paying back to the world that I really don't have any right to be in anymore. So please, be really, really careful around poisonous snakes. Anyway, let the professionals deal with them. Be safe, and God bless.